This is One Soccer Today for this Monday, October the 28th, with the full crew: Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson, and yours truly, Adam Jenkins. Our lead story today on the program, well, it is, of course, the two Canadian Premier League playoff matches that we saw yesterday. Two incredible matches, very different types of matches, as York United and Atletico Ottawa went to the league's first ever penalty shootout for Atleti to prevail. Five perfect pens to punch their ticket to the semifinal, and they will be on the road to Tim Hortons Field. Cavalry finally getting that win against Bobby Cerniotis and company at the Donut Box. They will be hosting the CPL final on Saturday, November the 9th, live here on One Soccer and CBC Sports. So no guarantee, Gareth Wheeler, that Forge will even be participating in the final. They got to go again, and they're riding a 3-match slump now from regular season into the postseason. Atletico Ottawa always plays Forge well, and those guys will probably beat the snot out of each other. All that to say, I ask you the following question, Wheels. Is Cavalry now, in your eyes, the heavy favorites to be crowned league champions for the first time?
I can't say heavy favorites here. It was a really good game between Cavalry and Forge, and really the game could have gone either way. And just the fact that Tobias Warshevsky is absolutely bang on form right now proved to be the difference in that game. I mean, full credit to Tommy Wheeldon Jr.'s side. They looked composed throughout this game, very comfortable playing away from home, a place that they hadn't won in their previous 8 tries. They're accomplished. They're fit at the back for the first time in a long time. They've only lost once out of the last 15 games. I think that Jay Herdman has been an astute ad, providing balance down the left-hand side. And the combination of Musi and Warshevsky provides you with 2 match winners. So they have all the ingredients of a title-winning team here, but they still need to go out and win it at home, which will be no easy task. I mean, I'm assuming, and I'm putting Forge in pole position to get back there. Forge are not losing 4 games in a row, are they? They've gone 3 games without a goal. This can't continue, will it? Question mark, question mark, question mark here. I mean, beating Forge twice in a row is a tall task for any side. That may be what Cavalry has to do here. For me, they weren't going to win if they were going to play away from home in the final. This gives them a fighter's chance. Let's call this a coin flip. No matter who they play in the final, I think that they're right in this.
Ollie, you were casting some aspersions there when the question was asked, will they? What do you think? Will they?
I mean, I think they're significant favorites right now by virtue of the fact that they're the only team in the final, right? So that's kind of by default. But regardless of who comes
Captain
through,
Obvious.
just saying,
Go
it's
on,
the
Ollie.
odds.
Go
But
on.
regardless of whoever comes through the semi, I still think they are going to have at least a slight edge in the final as the home team. Like, they've lost 1 game at ATCO Field all season long. It was a few months ago to York United with a starting lineup that's not going to look like the one they'll put out in the final. This team is ticking a lot of boxes right now. Like, I don't know. Watching Tobias Warshevsky yesterday, I can't remember, in terms of CPL teams, obviously they've played some top teams in CONCACAF, but I can't remember a CPL player doing that to Forge. Like, he bullied them in that first half. Like, every time the ball came near him, they couldn't shrug him off the ball. His combination of that physical strength and the close control is just like so difficult to deal with, and has added a completely different dimension to this Cavalry team, because Maya Bevan, and this is no knock on him, but he's a completely different type of player. He wanted to have the final touch and be that penalty area striker. Warshevsky, in terms of like touches per game, has more than double the involvement that Bevan did last season. And he just does so much, not only to be a goal threat himself, but to bring others into play. So that was a big contrast to what Forge had, obviously, at that centre forward position, which I think they're continuing to struggle with a bit. And, you know, I look through this Cavalry 11 and it just seems to me to not have that many weaknesses right now, if any.
And Jordan, here's what I find the most interesting about the Cup and the story, and how it's basically reversed to last year, or could be reversed to last year, where Cavalry was the dominant regular season team. And Tommy Wheeldon Jr. even said in the lead up to the match and the post match, like, table doesn't lie. Forge were the best team, the most consistent team. And we could sit here and argue who's the deepest team, who's the best team remaining of the 3. But in playoffs, as you well know, a lot of the times it's momentum, who's on form, who's feeling themselves, who's the one that wants to go out and take the matches on and win them. And right now, you could make the argument that Forge is third of three and will have their work cut out for them against Ottawa, who just humbled them a couple of weeks ago at Tim Hortons Field.
Yeah, Forge has to kick it into gear. Obviously, they have fans that expect more from them, but they finished the league with 50 points because their stars rose to the occasion more often than not. You see a Tristan Borges, I think around the 63rd minute, getting subbed out. For me, he has just been prolific this season. A guy like him, Benny Betabanga, players like that, Hajab Rapport, Becker, Ampoma, or if it's going to be even Chouanier, I looked at body language as well on the weekend. He just wasn't the same. Now, I will say this, with Forge, you can never count them out. And even further, with Bobby Smirnionis, he always finds a way to motivate his team and be successful. They always show up for big moments. Maybe this one, will I say, was a bit of arrogance or cocky going into this match? I think that Calgary just wanted it more. But what I will say now is that you have a nice situation where I said a couple of weeks ago that don't make it easy for Forge. Someone go out and try to challenge them for the double. Don't just let them walk and prance. And I'm glad that teams have listened and they've worked for it. I think Calgary, by winning this game, a big thing that they will have is that rest. Moosey, Worshevsky, a Charlie Trafford now. He can get some time where maybe Tommy Williams Jr. starts him. You can figure out what you want to do in the next 14 days to prepare for this match that's going to be at home. You don't have to get on a plane. You can really make Spruce Meadows your fortress. So for me, I still think they're strong favorites going into this match. But if it's Forge to go into the last game of the season, again, Bobby Smirnionis and company, they always have a trick up their sleeve. So that match will be very close hairline, very tight match.
12 days, bud.
Thank you.
So, got it in my calendar.
14? Yeah, I'm way out.
Ollie, I'm going to come back to you quickly for a word because you had the luxury of being at Tim Hortons Field. The thing that I noticed from the monitor, and I'm curious if you'll agree or disagree, Cavalry looked different to me in the playoffs. There's been some times where we've remarked where they've always sort of been the jovial, not that they ever didn't take a playoff match seriously because they're professionals, and of course they did, but there was almost like this tie done up, Windsor tie, three-piece suit, I'm here to win a game mentality about them that I don't think I've seen in 6 years.
Tommy had the flat cap back on. I thought that as soon as I saw it,
baby.
Yeah,
He
it's 2019 Tommy. He's feeling it. No, they look like a really good team. Borges was, like Jordan said, was not at his best, but I think you have to give credit to Gutierrez and Schoen for the way they played there. Yeah. They formed a really good partnership in midfields. Like I said, it's not many holes to pick in this Cavalry team right now.
Just really quickly here. It was just a really good game. I thought that both teams were really solid on the day. The difference is Forge with no Para at left back. They really miss another player joining the attack down the left. That is a huge loss. He would be back for the final if they make it there. And Bobby Smirniotis needs to find another solution rather than Mpoma as a false nine. It didn't work. He's a good player from a wider area. But who's going to play number 9 for Forge? These are the small margins that separated the size on the day. For me, the left back and the number 9, look, Oluwabi Bello, great defensively, but in terms of Forge's free-flowing attack, they need power in the team. So those were the differences on the day.
And Clonaritas, a surprise absence from the 18 as well. Someone who is typically a winger, but can't play at the 9. That's certainly going to be the question for Bobby Smirniotis in the lead up this week. And Jordan Wilson, he's going to try and get his 11 right. Forge will try to avoid losing back-to-back matches at home, which would be another remarkable thing should Atletico Ottawa go on and beat them again. Back-to-back matches at home in the playoffs, I should say. Your former side, they are out, and I'm curious how you think. Well, let's start with Atletico Ottawa. We'll save the York United thoughts for a moment. The penalties, the history there, the 4 goals, Sholajimo, everything that went on. It was an incredible game for me. Top 3 games of all time. You played in one of my top 3s, the Labor Day Classic, the Monsoon, and the CPL Final. For me, top 3 ever.
Wow.
Let's talk about Atletico Ottawa's performance, though, Jordan. I'm seeing the shaking of the heads, and I'm not interested in being proven wrong. What did you make from Atletico?
I'll say the first half. I don't need to watch that again. I'm totally fine with that.
We've had a few of those lately in the CPL, haven't we?
Playoff football. It brings special moments. The CPL never disappoints this time of year. I will say a few things quickly. I know the other gentleman will touch on it. Shola Jimo, something special.
Love the kid.
Special. To score in the 90, I think, third minute, the way he did in extra time, and just to kind of do a little smile, like the humility of this kid, and everyone I speak to, he played the same way even when he was a kid, just like worked his tail off, did his thing, but went forward with so much vim. And I just love the way he plays. I think he was a huge signing for York and just had a fantastic inaugural season. I'll talk about Atletico Ottawa. When I spoke with Wheels pregame, I just said they have to take the emergency brake off. They cannot be in neutral. They cannot coast. It is time to rev the engine and pull that forward. And the reason why I talk about the first half, I don't want to see it again, because they didn't rev. They didn't go forward. They sometimes put balls into an area, but there's one guy around three. If you're going to beat Forge at Tim Hortons Field, you have to replicate, if not take it even further than what you did the last time you were at Tim Hortons Field. They were pressing, they were high, they wanted the ball, everyone was eager. They didn't just play the ball side to side. They found gaps. They were willing to make those runs. Gmo, love you, buddy. They made those runs. They did all those things that they needed to do. If you're going to play in a semifinal game and you've assembled this team to go and win a trophy, and the only thing left is a North Star Cup, you have to go and play aggressive. You cannot play this type of football and hope that you get a pen or hope that Olympico goes in. You cannot do this as Atletico Ottawa. I saw a side, I won't say lucky, because in a playoff game, there are margins and they were there. 5 great pens, but it still went to pens. You were leading twice and it was level. So if you're going to go and beat Forge on the day, their quality of football has to increase. And I hope that it does, just for a spicy semifinal. So I don't know if that answers your question, but they were good in the second half, but they need to be much better if they want to go and compete for the real thing.
Well, I'm glad you took 2.5 minutes to not answer the question. Ollie, how about you? Better luck?
That's typical me.
No, that's typical me.
I thought they were lucky, to be honest with you. And like the weird thing is now is that they can go to Forge and maybe playing tight and on the counter attack isn't the worst thing in terms of an approach to an away game against Forge. But when you're at home against York United, you got to take the initiative more than they did in that game. And I thought they did leave it to chance by in the end winning on a penalty shootout. So you're just hoping to see more from this team, to see some kind of breakout from this team. It's been very inconsistent for the entire second half of the season. But like we talked about last night, maybe this is a team geared to give Forge some problems in a more cautious defensive way when they go away from home, which is all they're going to have to do now, whether they play in one game or two here the rest of the season. On GMO, like I think we have to highlight him again. I know Jordan touched on it already, but this kid is really special. I'm usually quite hesitant with 16-year-olds to get too carried away. There's a lot of time, a lot of growing and progression to happen in his game before he, gets anywhere near his peak. But to come into a playoff game and score one and set up one, totally turn it on its head at that age, you don't see that very often at any level of the game. And I think it's 4 goals, 2 assists now in 16 games or something like that. Like, they're real numbers, right? You put that over 28 games and you're in the conversation with some of the best players in the league. So what he's doing, I think, is pretty remarkable and just a really, really exciting story for this league going into next year, if he's even sticking around for next year.
GMO for president, baby.
2 against Atletico Ottawa as well. Wheels, last word on Atletico Ottawa to you, and then we'll transition to the 9 stripes.
I kind of... This was the get out of jail free card. This was the game that Ottawa simply had to find a way to win. Now they're playing with house money. I agree with Ollie. Like I said this to Jordan in the pre-match, because the emergency break, it's pulled up when this team plays. They're okay in possession. They knock the ball around, but they're so safe. That's what it is. They scored 2 goals in this game. One on a pen, which happened 9 seconds into the extra time. And the other one came from an Olympico, which was just horrendous goalkeeping and defending on it. That's it. That's how they scored the 2 goals in this game. Penalties were great, but that's it. That's a different story. But for a Forge team that, again, has questions around that number 9, they can sit back, play ugly football, try to grind out a result. I think going away from home actually kind of plays into their advantage in this game. I don't think that they have the advantage on Forge, but I think it suits their safe style of play as well as possible. I will say this: I think there's a little bit of controversy that comes out of this game because Nate Ingham, for me, was off the line on that penalty save. He was off the line. His heels were on the front of the line, and he stepped forward and certainly wasn't on the line when he saved that penalty from Mo Babuli. I mean, both goalkeepers were off the line very quickly. His heels were off the line when this was taken. Both goalkeepers did it throughout, but that's up to the assistant referee. Look at that. It's clear. He was off the line before Mo Babuli took that shot. Here we go again. There, like, I don't know what's the assistant referee doing standing on the
Why
line
is someone
if you're not going
standing
to make
there?
that call in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's a little thing, but it turned out to be a big thing because
No, for
that's
sure.
inevitably how Atletico Ottawa won the shootout there. If I'm York United, I'm aggrieved, and I'd be asking for an explanation. The goalkeepers, by the way, weren't warned throughout the shootout either. So refereeing needs to be better there, and it maybe just quite possibly cost York United a spot in this game.
In a shootout too, players are gonna do what referees allow them to do. Like,
Yeah,
if it's
exactly.
time wasting,
Yes.
kicking the ball. Like, I've walked past someone while I'm giving them a ball and saying the stage is yours, don't miss, and doing all that. And I was very loud and in their face. And there's stuff that you do to throw people off. But the rules of the game, everyone's talking about it. Feet have to be on the line. Vincencini, I think 3 out of the 5, his feet weren't on it. But again, you have 2 referees that
It
are
went
right
in.
there, one 6 yards away and one 12 yards away from the penalty spot. If they're not enforcing those rules, then yeah, it's really up to them.
Yep.
And something that really stuck out to me, and I know with some of the pitches, 3 of them, in fact, in the league, there's got to be a way to ensure that the goal line is not on that square piece of turf that covers where the uprights go. Because if I'm a keeper, I don't want my heels on that either, throwing off the balance. But you're right in terms of the refereeing. They're both there. They could have made the call. They decided not to. Clearly wasn't egregious. And ultimately, I think even if Nate was on his line, Babuli didn't take a very good penalty, and Ottawa smashed 5 of theirs.
I will also
Jordan.
say though, Jenkins, the officiating was great yesterday. I think we've been through some semifinals and it's been very wobbly and shaky. But I think the officiating yesterday was I won't say top notch, but good, very good.
That was almost a
I'd say
easy
top-notch.
compliment for you.
Well,
So
can I give a compliment to a referee? Drew Fisher,
sure
a Canadian, was just named referee of the year in Major League Soccer. So congrats to Drew Fisher. I could say good things about Canadian referees. Well done, Drew.
Okay, we
Well
have
done,
touched
Drew.
on
Wheels.
we have touched on Sholajimo a little bit. We're
All
going to
of
zoom out
which.
and quickly get some takes from the gentleman on York United now that their season has come to an end. They join Pacific as the clubs eliminated from the postseason. The one thing I will say, and this is my 2 cents, I found it really, really interesting to hear this club project in the media that they had nothing to lose, that they were playing with house money, that they didn't feel any pressure whatsoever to go to Ottawa and win the game. Now, that's possible that that's just what they were telling the media, trying to take some of the pressure off this team, but I found it a very interesting mindset to go into a game where once again they lose and they finish 4th. That's on the pitch. There is no doubt there is success off the pitch. The fact that it seems like there is a route for an identity for the club, that the support is growing, that the Pascal brothers have done a sensational job. But I'm interested to see what it looks like next year and how they can carry the ball forward with this group. Ollie, let's quickly go to you first. And the season at a whole, they're out. They finished 4th, but some positive steps. And I think the off the pitch maybe shines a bit brighter and should shine a bit brighter considering what the club's gone through.
Yeah, good season, positive steps for sure. But now the question for me is who's the manager going to be going into next season? Because I believe Benjamin Mora has already publicly said he's got a contract until the end of the year. His name has already been in the Mexican newspapers in connection with other jobs. So what's that situation? And is he going to come back for the 2025 season? Because I think he's obviously had a positive impact on this team. Full off season, the chance to build the roster in his image. You'd be pretty excited about York United. But if not, then obviously that opens us up to potentially a completely different situation and a new head coach.
And how many players would leave if the manager left? And that's not exclusive to York United. Gareth, your thoughts?
I thought they had a really good season. I think that there's a good nucleus there. It's about if you can keep them together. Noah Botnay, 2 bad injuries, derailed his season. Really good player. I think they're close. I think they're moving in the right direction. I really like the new ownership there. They're ambitious. They want to push the envelope. And I think most of the work that needs to be done in the offseason is the off-field stuff, not on it. But I think they have their eye on the prize.
Jordan.
Just shy. I think 3 players, if they keep that core, like Wheel says, that nucleus for sure, and just add certain players, whether it be that they know from the Mexican landscape to come in, but also just finding the gems like Gmo and playing them. I think for York, I said it, I got a bit of shtick earlier in the season, but I said York is an average team. What I mean by average, like 4th best team in the Canadian Premier League. But what you want to see is a little bit of a leaf and a bit of a run. And they did that. They beat Pacific in a 5th place game. That's better than what they did last year. They took Atletico Ottawa, who everyone called a super team, who has more talented players on their team than York. Took them to penalty shootout. Now it's just finding a bit of depth in the squad, because the dip within the season that they had was really because 2 or 3 of their top players were injured. In the CPL, you have to make sure that your bottom level is a little bit higher. So recruiting that 18th guy that can do a shift throughout the season. But yeah, I'm with Wheels and Ollie. There's a lot of positive to take from York in the direction they're going.
I sung his praises a lot this year, but I think since this is really the last time we're going to talk about York United until we do a club-by-club debrief, I imagine, in the coming weeks. It's award season in the CPL. If there was to be a most improved or sort of comeback player of the year, I think Elijah Adekudu would have to be right up on that list.
Yeah.
He was marvelous this season. Very amazing to see him take a position, make it his own, and be such a dominant player for York United. So kudos to Elijah.
I think older players too, you get in a box, you're like, oh, I'm a player that likes to pass and I don't get stuck in the tackles because I've never done it. Like, I think he just embodied everything that the position needed this year. And we haven't seen all that come to fruition at his time in the CPL. So I'm with you, Jenko. You did well.
10 out of 10, Elijah. Great season for you. And a lot of players at York United should be beyond satisfied with their performances in 2024. On to Major League Soccer, the Whitecaps, the last Canadian MLS side standing. They opened their round against LAFC at BMO Stadium, not BMO Field, and they fell despite scoring in stoppage time. So the series best of 3 shifts back to BC Place. And Gareth Wheeler, you have pointed out on numerous occasions that Vancouver, a team much better away from home this season than at home. Do you see a route back for the Caps here?
It's tough to make that argument. LAFC have just thoroughly dominated Vancouver Whitecaps in recent years. I just think that this is the worst matchup possible in the Western Conference for them. Watching this game, I mean, Vancouver started the game off brightly, but there's just too much quality in this LAFC side, and they're able to pounce on mistakes. Bouanga, exceptional. They had Oliveira, Bogusz, Giroux. Like, the attacking players in this team are just ridiculously good. And it kind of felt by the end of the game, because it's not, the tie isn't done on aggregate. Some of the changes that were being made were a little bit weird by both sides. Like, they're bringing on Carlos Vela for the first time. They almost kind of mailed it in late. So that last goal with the game settled didn't really mean much. I think the Caps are a good team. Are they a great team? Probably not. And I just think that LAFC, just the worst matchup possible for them. So is there a way back? I simply just don't see it.
Worst format. Format sucks.
Format is
I don't disagree.
So weird. Like, I don't know what's wrong with the footballing world if you can just have an aggregate winner.
Legs.
Like, it's
that late goal meant nothing.
Like, exactly, that's the thing. You're like, oh, they scored a late goal. You're like, oh, well, that means nothing, because just all that matters is the win. It's just such a weird format. So I don't think that plays into their favor as well. If they went back home and it was 2-1
with an away goal,
it's alive, right? But
either way, they have to go back, so the format plays against them too.
Well, don't count out the Caps. They still can advance. They would need to beat LAFC twice in a row at home, then on the road. And the way he's playing, Ryan Gauld is going to do everything in his power and then some to will this group on in the MLS Cup playoffs. What a player. It was nice to see him get one, even if, as you guys rightfully allude to, kind of a meaningless consolation goal, but a team that we will continue to root for, continue to track, and we'll have more on One Soccer Today's to follow. Moving on to today's Visa Women's Football Report. Presented by Visa, the Women's Football Report. Jordan Wilson, Jess Lisi, and I were in studio for Canada taking on the World Cup champions. A 10 p.m. kickoff. Spain equalized almost at the stroke of midnight. And there's a few different ways to look at the outcome. They play the world number 3, the reigning World Cup champions. They get a draw for the second time in just 4 games against them, but coming so close, Oliver Platt, to defeating Spain for the first time as well. I think you look at the stats and there's very little extra analysis that needs to go on it. There's a million questions surrounding this team, and I think a few people were perhaps a little disappointed with a lack of experimentation in a match that you wanted to test yourself, of course, but without really a Euro to prepare for like the Spanish had, or a CONCACAF W Gold Cup or W Championship on the horizon. This team is kind of middling. Always great to see them in action, but I'm wondering what your takeaway is from that window and knowing that we'll see them again for hopefully a couple of matches in 3 or 4 weeks' time.
I mean, I think this team more than anything needs, like, and you guys have talked about it at length in the studio, fresh direction and fresh identity. Like, there's some good players in this team, and they did well to nearly beat and in the end get a result against the world champions and a team that, frankly, in a lot of aspects of the game right now was far superior on the day. They controlled this game with the ball. But I don't necessarily think Canada need to be like Spain. They don't need to be that type of team. They just need to have some kind of identity one way or the other, right? And I think, I referenced the men's side a lot in this case because I think Jesse Marsh has brought that in for them when at a time when they really needed it. And I think this women's national team needs the same kind of injection of new ideas and a real idea of how this team is going to go forwards. And they've got the time, like you said, to actually work on that and implement that. So I'm hoping, obviously, with this investigation, it gets wrapped up sooner rather than later, and they can go about finding that person who can really inject something new into this team.
The 89th minute equalizer. Spain also missing Bonmati, which is no slouch to be out of the 18 as well. But Canada, a good litmus test. And it was very neat to see Smith, Vienne, and Heidema start. That was a bit of experimentation that the shape didn't really change. And Ali, I think you're right. They don't need to be Spain, but also they can't be Spain. We don't have the players to play that type of football. I think whoever does take on this group, the biggest thing is going to be instilling that identity, and whatever it is, buy in. And when the LA games come around, the Olympics being Canada's tournament and the next World Cup, it's an opportunity to show that there has been strides forward, because there's a lot of good things happening off the field while there is also the investigation going on, the external investigation. But I'm hoping that whenever it's all said and done, they can take a clean break and just move forward and build towards, because there's an exciting player group with this team. There's no doubt about it. Our Visa Women's Football Report for today, and time to wrap up the show next with our TonyBet top picks. Back to the MLS Cup playoffs for our TonyBet top picks. Gareth Wheeler, starting with you. Columbus Crew, -152. New York at +340.
Take the Columbus Crew on the handicap, an elite home side, the second best home side in Major League Soccer. When it comes to expected goals per 90 minutes, the Red Bull cannot keep a clean sheet. I mean, kept a clean sheet in 10 in a row. Crew just beat them a couple weeks ago with their second team playing. So I like the Crew on the handicap in this one, and to advance with relative ease on their way to winning MLS Cup this season.
Oliver Platt, you make it 2 for 2?
I do. I much prefer Minnesota United as a potential upset of the 2 games tonight. So that would be the one I'd look at for a bit more of an outsider.
Well, since we got to the second match that we want to talk about, Jordan Wilson, I'm going to give you the choice. So we explain the odds for the Crew and the Red Bulls. Real Salt Lake -106, just outside of Salt Lake City, and Minnesota United +235. Are you tempted, like Ollie, for some value there?
Ollie has never steered me wrong. Ever.
That is
he has never done it. Minnesota.
All right, the TonyBet top picks
I just want to say,
Jeff.
throw this out there. These two sides have drawn their last 4 times that they played one another. Like, of all the games that are played in this first round, this match is the most evenly contested. And you might want to play who's ever the underdog here on the handicap to provide a little bit of value in the first leg. That is Minnesota United.
Straight up drop plus 270 as well. All right, we got to get out of here. If you missed match night last night, first of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, kudos to you guys for shouting at Alistair Johnston, scoring and captaining
The boy.
Celtic. Congratulations to him. What a ride he's
Capitano.
been on from Von Azuri to the captain of Glasgow Celtic. That's it for us today. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you again on Thursday. And hey, new episode of One Nation tomorrow.